So our next speaker is Konstantinos, and he will tell us about MPC, where the adversary is both active and can apply omissions.
Thank you for the introduction. So this is joint work with Vasilis Zikas, and I'm going to talk about general adversary structures in byzantine agreement and MPC with active and omission corruption. So I try to avoid defining MPC in order to save some time, and I'll assume that all of you are familiar with it. And I'll try to describe our setting. So we are in the perfect security setting with information theoretic security, no setup, and zero error probability. And the adversary that we are taking into consideration here is unbounded, static, and rushing. And the types of corruption that we're interested in are the following. Active corruption, where the adversary has full access and control over the players, and he can do whatever he wants with them. And he can make them deviate arbitrarily from the instructions of the protocol. And on top of that, we are also using another type of corruption called omission corruption, where no information leaks to the adversary from the party that he corrupts, and he is able to block obliviously any messages that he selects from those parties, either a message going to them or coming from them. He can block it without knowing the contents of the message. So why are we interested in omissions? The reason is that it is a realistic type of failure, and it can model real-life scenarios. For example, if some user has temporary connectivity issues and suffers from bad connection or whatever, omissions can model that. And also, if the user is unable to follow the protocol because he has to go offline or he needs to step down for a bit from the computation, but is still benign and he doesn't do it maliciously, this is also what we capture here. And what's interesting is that this type of corruption is more benign than active corruption, but at the same time less benign than crash failures, because in the case where crash failures are considered, the user just goes completely offline and cannot recover, and this is irrevocable. So in our case, things are more complicated and more difficult to deal with, so it's more interesting. And what's also interesting is that there has been a lot of recent work on omissions, and actually we had another paper, there was another paper on Tuesday about them. So it's very interesting to consider them. So let's see an example of 8 players trying to communicate and perform MPC. And let's assume that P1, P4, and P7 are honest, and P2, P5, and PC are actively corrupted, and finally P3 and P8 are omission corrupted. In this case, as you can see, the channels between the honest players are there. However, the adversary is able to select if some messages from omission corrupted parties are able to reach other parties. So this is up to the adversary for each independent message to select if it will go through or no. And omissions have been studied before, so this problem has been on for some time. What is different in our approach? The interesting part is that we no longer consider threshold model, but we are in the general adversary model, as introduced by Hirt and Maurer. And here we have a full adversary structure that describes the capabilities of the adversary. This makes it more expressive than the threshold model, and it can describe situations and scenarios that otherwise could not be described by the threshold model. And the way that this is performed is by a set of classes, Z1, Z2, etc., which the adversary selects one. So from the whole adversary structure, the adversary picks one class, and this is his choice. And since he's static, as I mentioned earlier, he sticks with this choice. So what is this class of this structure? Every class contains a pair of actively corrupted parties and omission corrupted parties. So whenever the adversary chooses, he chooses those two sets. And let's see an example to make it more clear. Here, for example, we have this structure. And we have 4 players, P1, P2, P3, P4. And as we can see, in the first case, the adversary could choose to actively corrupt P1. So we have this set of actively corrupt parties, and the omission corrupt is empty. In the second case, he could select to actively corrupt P2, P3, and P4, respectively. So this can easily be described by the threshold model as well, when we have ni equals 4 and t is equal to 1. This is exactly the same thing. And as you can see, this is a symmetric table. If you have a more different example where the things are not symmetrical, however, this scenario cannot be described by the threshold model. And this is what makes it interesting. That here we have specific characterizations for each party. Here P3 could be omission corrupted in those two classes, P4 could be omission corrupted in this class, and P1 and P2 could be actively corrupted in Z1 and Z2 respectively. So why is this very important? Because this is a specific example of a situation where we cannot get things. So in this specific example, this structure makes it impossible for us to perform secure message transmission from P3 to P4 if we have this structure. And this general adversary structure can capture it, but in the threshold model, it would be really difficult to come up with this impossibility. So that's why we're interested in this problem, and this is the gap that we try to fill in the literature, general adversaries with active and omission in the perfect security model. And as you can see, there's a lot of recent work over here in the threshold model. So what are our contributions? We provide conditions for perfectly secure Byzantine agreement and multi-party computation. And we also provide impossibility results when those conditions do not hold. So we make them tight, sufficient, and necessary. And we also, of independent interest, we provide the first UC treatment of the problem of omissions, which turned out to be non-trivial. And on top of that, so far in the literature, every general adversary protocol that existed used composition, but there was no formal composable treatment of the problem. So we fill in this gap as well, both for omissions and for general adversaries. And let's see the conditions. So in order to get secure MPC, we need two conditions: a condition for Byzantine agreement and a condition for secure message transmission between each pair of parties. So our condition would be like that: the Byzantine agreement condition together with the SMT condition for any pair of parties. And let's see them separately in order to make it easier. So this is the condition that we have for Byzantine agreement. It says that whenever we have three classes that the adversary could choose from, the union of the actively corrupted sets together with the intersection of two respective omission corrupted sets should not be able to cover the whole player set. And in order to contrast this with the fail corruption case, here we would have three sets, all three sets of fail corrupted parties. And this is very interesting because our condition implies this one. So our condition is stronger, and it makes sense because omissions cover actually the case of fail corruption as well. And the condition for secure message transmission is the following. If the sender belongs in the intersection of two actively omission corrupted sets and the receiver belongs in the third one, then these conditions should hold. The union of two actively corrupted sets and the third omission corrupted sets, together with intersection as before, should not be able to cover the whole player set. Again, to contrast it with a failed corruption setting, here we have no condition. It would be unconditional. So this is the essence of our problem, that omissions make it really harder to achieve secure message transmission. And finally, in order to wrap up, let's see what is our approach to deal with this problem. So the whole problem is that when a message is dropped, we don't know if it is the sender who is faulty or the receiver, if the one is omission corrupt or the other one is, or some of them is actively corrupt and is not sending messages. So we try to overcome this problem. How do we do it? We make our protocols identifiable, and this way we detect when an omission corrupt party fails to receive a message or send a message. And whenever this happens, parties are either publicly identified or privately they self-identify themselves, and in this case we call them zombies according to the previous literature. And if this is the case, they step down from the protocol. They no longer participate. So how do we reach our solution? We start with a consensus broadcast primitive. Then we build the SMT primitive that I described. And with these things, we are able to build a detectable MBC that detects corrupted parties. And when we do that, we can run this detectable MBC protocol. If at some point an omission corrupt party is detected or a corrupt party is detected, we can just remove him from the player set and restart from the beginning. And we do it again and again and again until no longer the protocol no longer aborts. And in this case, we are able to reach our robust MBC protocol. And at this point only, we reconstruct our final outcome. So the players are able to robustly reconstruct their outcome and reach the final decision. So this is the last overview. How do we reach our result? We start with a condition for Byzantine agreement, and this helps us get broadcast. Then with this condition, together with the SMT condition, we're able to get secure message transmission. And then with the condition for broadcast, together with the condition for SMT, for any pair of players, we are able to get the final MBC that we want. Thank you very much. You can find more details and proofs in the online version of the paper. So thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, so let's thank the speaker again.